I'd never date a black woman, ever. He once laughed with his friends and said that. But the moment Maya Johnson walked into the Northspire boardroom, everything changed. A navy blue suit tailored to perfection, a crisp white blouse, a statement gold necklace catching the light. Her natural curls framed her face, her makeup polished yet bold, her gaze sharp. Without a single word, she commanded the room into silence. Alexander heard the echo of his own mistake, that foolish line he once thought was just a joke. But in this instant, his heart betrayed him. Maya had spent her life proving she was not a token, not a quota, not a box to be checked. She was talent, discipline, and fire, a woman who refused to be diminished. And now, the man with the most power in that room, the man who once swore he could never love someone like her, couldn't take his eyes off her. What happens when power, wealth, and prejudice collide with real love? If you've ever been judged for what you are instead of who you are, this story is for you. Stay with us, because what comes next will change the way you see everything. Alexander Royce, 33 years old, the youngest partner in the history of Northspire. His reputation, sharp, calculating, untouchable. This morning he sat at the head of the boardroom table, every eye waiting for his lead. He thrived on this silence. He thrived on the weight of his name. Power was familiar. Respect was expected. He rarely questioned it. But when Maya Johnson walked in, something shifted. His voice caught for the briefest second. He adjusted his tie, trying to mask it. It didn't work. The man who had always commanded attention suddenly found his attention pulled away, pulled toward the woman standing at the end of the table. Her presence unsettled him in a way that numbers, contracts, and board members never could. She didn't try to impress him. She didn't even look at him, and that, more than anything, made him feel exposed. Alexander, the man everyone admired, felt his confidence bend in silence. For the first time in years, he was not the most powerful person in the room. When it was her turn, Maya spoke with calm precision. "My name is Maya Johnson, originally from Atlanta, graduate of Georgia Tech, recipient of the Emerging Talent Award in Architecture." Her voice carried, smooth but steady. She didn't raise it. She didn't need to. The room leaned in without realizing it. Somewhere down the table, two colleagues whispered, "Quota hire," one muttered. A quick laugh followed. Maya ignored them. She had heard it all before. Alexander heard it too. He expected her to falter, maybe defend herself. She didn't. Instead, she adjusted her blazer, looked directly at the screen, and continued her introduction without pause. No anger, no pleading, just certainty. It was in that moment Alexander realized she was nothing like the assumptions that trailed her name. She wasn't a symbol, she wasn't a token. She was a force. For the first time, he wondered if the people at this table were even capable of seeing her. And he wondered quietly why it mattered to him so much that they did. Alexander moved into the presentation. "Northspire's Civic Tower Project," he began, clicking through polished slides. A bold design, focused on efficiency and prestige. When he finished, silence held for a beat. Then Maya raised her hand. Calm. Certain. "Your design lacks community space. Harrison residents asked for more open areas. This tower gives them glass and steel. It does not give them belonging." The room stilled. A junior employee gasped. No one interrupted a partner. No one. Alexander forced a smile. "Our clients didn't request community features." Maya didn't flinch. "Sometimes clients don't know what they need until you show them. Architecture is not only about profit, it's about people." The weight of her words filled the room. Executives shifted in their chairs. William, the senior director, cleared his throat. "She makes a point." For the first time, Alexander felt the balance tip. He had been challenged, openly, directly, by someone no one expected to matter. And the worst part? She was right. Back in his office, Alexander closed the door and pressed his palms against the desk. Maya's words replayed in his head. The silence of the boardroom replayed too. Then, like a cruel echo, James's voice rose from memory. His closest friend. A year ago, over drinks at the country club. "You? With a black woman? Come on, Alex. Not your type." He had laughed then. Careless, stupid. "Never. Not in a million years." Now the memory cut like glass. He had believed those words defined him, that they were harmless, that no one would ever hear them again. But Maya's presence made the lie too clear. His chest tightened. His throat burned. He hated himself for remembering. He hated himself even more for meaning it back then. For the first time, Alexander wondered if the man he thought he was, the man everyone respected, was nothing but a mask, and he couldn't stop hearing her voice in the boardroom. Architecture is about people. Alexander walked past an office on the lower floor. Through the glass, he saw Maya. She stood at her desk, arranging framed certificates and an award shaped like a crystal tower. For a moment, he hesitated. Then he pushed the door open. "That's impressive," he said, nodding at the award. His voice was softer than usual, almost human. Maya turned. Her eyes didn't sparkle with thanks. They cut straight into his. "I didn't come here to decorate a wall," she said quietly, "and I'm not here to decorate this company either." Alexander froze. No one ever spoke to him like that. Not clients, not colleagues, not even his rivals. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain. But nothing came out. Instead, he just stood there, facing the truth in her gaze. Maya picked up the award and set it on the shelf. Her movements were calm, steady, unshaken. Alexander felt like the one being measured. When he finally left the room, his chest was tight. For the first time in years, Alexander Royce was the one off balance. That night, Alexander lay awake staring at the ceiling. His penthouse apartment stretched around him. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glowing beneath. Yet, it felt empty. Why had he said those words years ago? Why had he laughed with his friends and thrown out that cruel line? He told himself it was the culture he grew up in, the golf clubs, the private schools, and the casual jokes that carried poison he never questioned. But now, those excuses tasted like ash. He thought of Maya's eyes in the office. Clear, direct, unmoved by his position. She was proof of everything he never bothered to see. Alexander turned onto his side, restless. For the first time in his life, he wondered if his power meant nothing, if all the respect he earned was built on sand. The city outside kept buzzing. His mind would not quiet. Maya Johnson had walked into his world, and now she was in his head. The next morning, Alexander entered the lounge near the boardroom. Two associates leaned by the counter with coffee cups in hand. "She's just a quota hire," one muttered. "They needed someone to check the diversity box." The other chuckled. "Pretty, though. That'll help." Alexander stopped. The words burned. A week ago, he might have let them slide, not today. He stepped forward. His tone was even, but sharp enough to cut. "Don't mistake her place here. She earned it. And if you can't see that, maybe you don't belong at this table." The room went silent. Both men shifted uncomfortably, eyes dropping to their cups. Alexander felt the rush of his own words. This was not like him. He was known for being polished, detached, strategic. Not confrontational. But defending Maya felt necessary. As he walked away, he realized something had shifted inside him. Not only how he saw her, but how he saw himself. That evening, the office lights burned long after most had gone. Maya sat bent over a scale model, adjusting tiny beams. Alexander stepped in quietly. "Need a second set of eyes?" She didn't answer at first. Then she slid the model toward him. "Check the angles." They worked side by side, no small talk, just focus. But the silence was different this time. It wasn't cold. It was charged. Her passion was visible in every move, the way she adjusted, measured, corrected. Alexander felt pulled into that rhythm, like gravity. When their hands brushed over the same piece, neither moved. A pause stretched. The air felt heavier. Maya broke it with a soft laugh, shaking her head. "Don't mess up my work." Alexander smiled, a real one, not the kind he used in boardrooms. They stayed late. Hours slipped by, and when they finally packed up, Alexander realized he didn't want the night to end. That night, back in his apartment, Alexander found himself replaying the quiet hours with Maya. The brush of her hand, her laugh over the model, the way she never tried to impress him yet, left him unsettled. The weekend came. Alexander met his sister Ivy for brunch in a small cafe uptown. She was sharp, outspoken, a journalist who thrived on uncovering truth. "You've got that look," she teased, stirring her coffee. "Who is she?" Alexander tried to deflect, but Ivy leaned closer. "Don't bother. I know. Maya Johnson. I profiled her last year for the Times. Brilliant designer. Fierce advocate for community projects." He blinked. "You wrote about her?" "Of course," Ivy said. "She's the real deal. You should be honored to work with her." Alexander nodded slowly, hiding the twist in his chest. His own sister knew more about Maya than he did. For a man used to commanding the room, it was humbling. Ivy smirked. "Just don't screw it up, Alex. Women like her don't waste time on men who aren't worth it." He didn't reply. but inside he wondered if he could ever be the man Maya deserved. North Spire's annual charity gala was weeks away. It was more than a party. It was a showcase of power, wealth, and the company's image. This year, the board decided Maya should present the keynote on design and community impact. It was an honor. It was also a spotlight she never asked for. Alexander heard the decision in the morning briefing. He nodded as if it were routine. But inside, something else stirred. He found himself volunteering for the planning committee. He claimed it was to ensure investors were handled well. The truth was simpler. He wanted more time near Maya. She worked late on her presentation, draft after draft. He drifted into the room, offering suggestions that weren't always needed. She didn't complain. She didn't encourage him either. At one point, she glanced up. "This speech isn't for you, Alexander. It's for the community." He nodded, caught. "I know." He didn't add the truth. The gala was becoming less about donors, less about prestige. For him, it was becoming about her. One evening, Alexander asked, "Coffee? To talk through your draft?" They met at a quiet cafe near the office. She carried her laptop. He carried his nerves. For a few minutes, they spoke about slides, graphs, the flow of her speech. His eyes stayed on her longer than he realized. Maya set her cup down. Her voice was calm, but her words cut. "Tell me something, Alexander. Are you here because of the work, or because of me?" The question hung heavy. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Both," he admitted, softer than he meant. She leaned back, arms crossed. "That's a problem." He wanted to argue, to explain that he respected her talent, that it wasn't just attraction, but his throat tightened. Maya shook her head. "I can handle the work. What I can't handle is being confused about why you're standing next to me." Alexander sat there in silence, coffee untouched, feeling the wall she had just drawn between them. It was late, the parking garage dim and echoing. Maya stood by her car, staring at a flat tire. She sighed, pulling out her phone. "Need help?" Alexander's voice came from behind. He had been leaving at the same time. She hesitated, then nodded. "Only if you actually know how to change one." He rolled up his sleeves and crouched by the wheel. "I grew up with a father who refused to call roadside service, said a man should know his tools." Maya leaned against the car, arms crossed. "My dad said the opposite, said his daughter should never have to depend on a man to fix her life." They both laughed softly. The sound eased the tension. As he tightened the lug nuts, she said, "So why architecture for you?" Alexander paused. "Control. Buildings don't lie. They stand or they fall." She looked down, thoughtful. "For me, it was survival. Communities need spaces that care for them. I wanted to build those spaces." The wheel clicked into place. Their eyes met in the quiet garage. For once, they weren't partner and newcomer. They were just two people, shaped by fathers, building different dreams. The North Spire Gala shimmered with chandeliers and champagne glasses. Gold, velvet, and whispers filled the hall. When Maya walked in, the room shifted. A flowing golden dress, her hair styled with effortless grace. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Alexander stood across the room, his glass frozen mid-air. He had seen her in boardrooms, in late nights at the office. But this was different. She carried herself like she owned the space. Before he could cross the floor, a hand clapped his shoulder. James, his old friend, grinning with too much wine in his eyes. "Quite the sight," James muttered, nodding toward Maya. "Didn't expect her to clean up like that." Alexander tensed. His gaze stayed on Maya. She was talking with donors, smiling politely, but her eyes flicked his way once. He felt it. James leaned in, voice low, smug. "Careful, Alex. You're staring. People will notice." Alexander forced a smile, but his chest burned. It wasn't the crowd or the whispers. It was the weight of James's presence. The triangle had formed even before a word was spoken. Later in the evening, James found his way to Maya. Alexander was close, but not close enough. James smirked, lifting his glass. "You know, Maya, it's funny. A year ago, Alex told me something I can't forget." She turned, her smile steady but wary. "And what was that?" James didn't hesitate. His voice carried enough for Alexander to hear. "He swore he'd never date a black woman. Not ever." The words cracked through the air. Maya's eyes went straight to Alexander. No anger in her face, just a sharp, cutting stillness. "Is it true?" Alexander's throat closed, his hands clenched at his sides. For once, the man who always had an answer had none. "Yes." he forced out. The single word hung heavy. Maya inhaled, her chest rising. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She only said, quiet, but devastating, "Then every moment since has been a lie." The gala noise went on around them, but for Alexander, the room had collapsed into silence. As her name was called, Maya's chest tightened. The echo of James's words and Alexander's admission weighed heavy. But instead of breaking her, the pain steadied her. She walked into the spotlight not as a wounded woman, but as a voice for every person ever diminished. The gala program moved forward. The host called Maya to the stage. Applause filled the hall. She stepped into the spotlight, golden dress glowing against the lights. Alexander stood below, surrounded by investors and peers. For the first time, he felt small. He had built towers across the skyline, but here, he was nothing but a man crushed by his own past. Maya's voice rose, clear and steady. Architecture is more than glass and steel. It is more than numbers on a page. At its best, it connects people. It gives children a place to play. It gives elders a bench to rest. It gives a neighborhood the chance to breathe together. The crowd leaned in, silent, drawn by her conviction. She looked across the room, not at Alexander, but beyond him. We must build spaces that heal, not divide, that honor every life, not just the privileged few. Applause thundered. Alexander clapped too, but the sound rang hollow in his ears. She stood taller on that stage than he had ever seen, and he realized, with painful clarity, that she had power he could never own, because hers came from truth. Alexander lay awake in his penthouse. The city lights stretched endlessly, but inside, the silence pressed on him. Maya's words echoed, her steady voice, her conviction, and James's careless laugh that had cut the night apart. He replayed it all, frame by frame, his silence, his shame. The way Maya looked at him, not with anger, but with disappointment deep enough to pierce. For years, he had defined himself by wealth, by prestige, by the respect of men like James. But what did it mean if he had no respect for himself? He turned restlessly, unable to breathe under the weight of it. Something had to change. Not with speeches, not with apologies, with action. Alexander sat up before dawn, looking out at the skyline. Towers he had built gleamed against the horizon. Cold, proud, empty. He whispered into the dark, "No more." In that moment, he made a choice. He would prove, first to himself, then to Maya, that he was not the man he had been. And he would do it not with words, but with what he built next. The next week, the partners gathered in the glass-walled conference room. On the table sat the Jefferson Street proposal, a civic center in one of Seattle's oldest black neighborhoods. James scoffed. "It's a small contract, good PR at best. Let's not waste senior resources on this." A few chuckles rippled across the room. Alexander leaned forward, his voice steady. "It's not small, it's essential, and I propose Maya Johnson lead it." Silence. All eyes turned to him. "She has the expertise in community-focused design, more than I do, more than any of us in this room." James raised a brow. "You're giving away your own project?" Alexander didn't flinch. "I'm giving it to the best architect for the job." For the first time in his career, he laid down power, not to protect his image, but to lift someone else. Maya sat still, her expression unreadable, but deep inside, a seed of change began to take root. Later that day, Maya found Alexander in his office. Her tone was careful. "Why me? Is this about easing your guilt?" Alexander met her eyes. "No, this is about the truth. You're better for this project than I ever could be." The words hung in the air, honest, bare. Maya crossed her arms, searching his face, waiting for arrogance, for insincerity. Instead, she saw only resolve. "You'd put your reputation on the line for this?" "Yes," he said simply, "because the community deserves the best, and you are the best." For a moment, her guard slipped. A flicker of surprise, almost disbelief. Then, slowly, a small smile. Not a victory smile, but something gentler, like a wall beginning to crack. "Fine," she said softly. "I'll take it." It was the first time she had given him even a sliver of trust. And for Alexander, it felt like sunlight after years of shadow. The first community forum was held in a modest church hall on Jefferson Street. Folding chairs, coffee in styrofoam cups, children running between aisles. Maya walked in with ease, greeting residents by name, shaking hands, listening. She belonged here. Alexander followed, uncomfortable at first, He had spent a lifetime in marble lobbies and glass towers. This world was unfamiliar, too real. An older woman tugged his sleeve. "You one of those architects?" "Yes, ma'am," he answered carefully. "Then listen to us. Don't just build us something pretty. Build us something we need." He nodded, humbled. And he did listen. To parents asking for safe play areas. To shop owners worried about parking. To a teenager sketching her dream of an art studio. As the voices poured in, Alexander felt the bubble of privilege he had lived in begin to crack. This wasn't about prestige or money. It was about people, lives, futures. When Maya glanced at him across the room, he didn't look away. For the first time, he wasn't just watching her. He was learning from her. After the Jefferson Forum, they worked late again, reviewing sketches, reworking models. Hours slipped by until hunger forced them out to a small diner near the office. The food was simple, but the conversation flowed. They talked about music, favorite books, and the strange paths that had led them both to architecture. For once, work wasn't the center. It was past midnight when Alexander walked Maya to her car. The parking lot was nearly empty, lit by the pale glow of street lamps. She pulled her coat tighter against the chill. He hesitated, hands in his pockets. Then, almost without thinking, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Their eyes met. His uncertain, hers guarded, but curious. Slowly, he leaned closer. She didn't stop him. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper, lingering, as if both were afraid it might disappear if they moved too quickly. When they finally parted, Maya whispered, "Good night, Alexander." It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't a rejection either. And for him, that one fragile moment felt like hope made real. A week later, Maya invited Alexander to dinner with her father, Vernon Campbell. The retired city planner had built half the public spaces in Atlanta, and his presence carried weight. The meal was quiet at first. Vernon asked about Alexander's projects, his background, his family. Alexander answered honestly, resisting the urge to polish the truth. Finally, Vernon leaned forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Loving my daughter isn't just about feelings. It's about responsibility. To stand with her when the world doesn't. To protect her, even from your own circles. Can you do that?" Alexander met his gaze. "I'm trying. Every day. And I'll keep trying, because she's worth it." Maya watched silently, torn between pride and fear. She knew her father's warning came from love, but it also reminded her of the risks. Vernon nodded once, but his eyes stayed sharp. "We'll see." It wasn't approval, but it wasn't dismissal either. The door was left open, for now. The next month, Alexander brought Maya to his mother's charity luncheon at the Royce estate. The gardens were immaculate, the guests polished, the whispers sharp. Maya carried herself with grace, but the condescension was there. Smiles that didn't reach eyes, questions laced with insult. "Did you come here on scholarship?" one woman asked. Alexander's jaw tightened. He had heard enough. He stood, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Let me be clear. Maya Johnson is not a charity case. She is an award-winning architect. She is brilliant, and she is the woman I love." The room fell silent. Every eye turned. Maya froze, her breath caught. His mother's expression flickered. Surprise, then unease. "Ethan," she said softly, "this isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," he replied. "Because if I can't stand for her here, in front of the people who raised me, then I don't deserve her at all." Maya's heart pounded. For the first time he had chosen her, publicly, undeniably. And the cost didn't matter to him. The fallout came quickly. Word spread after the luncheon, not about Maya's brilliance, but about Alexander's declaration. At the next partners' meeting, William Porter's face was grim. "The Henderson Group is threatening to withdraw. They say your relationship complicates the firm's image." Silence weighed on the room. Millions of dollars hung in the balance. William leaned forward, his voice low. "Alex, I'm on your side, but think carefully. Perhaps keep things discreet, at least until the contract is secured." Alexander's jaw clenched. He looked around at the other partners, men who had always admired his ambition, now waiting for him to fold. "No," he said firmly. "I will not hide her. Not for Henderson. Not for anyone. If they walk, they walk." The room stirred with unease. William sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You're making this difficult." Alexander's voice softened, but stayed resolute. What's the point of building towers if I can't stand on my own principles? This firm means nothing if it costs me her dignity. For the first time, Alexander realized what mattered most wasn't money or prestige. It was love, and the courage to defend it. Days later, Alexander requested a private meeting with Robert Henderson. The older man arrived expecting contrition, a chance to reassert his power. Instead, Alexander met him with calm resolve. "Henderson, let's be direct," he began. "If my relationship with Maya makes you uncomfortable, then perhaps Northspire isn't the right firm for you." Henderson blinked, taken aback. "You'd throw away millions for this?" "For her," Alexander said, steady, "because she is not just this. She is the best architect I've ever worked with, and she is the woman I love. If that is too much for you, then yes, take your money elsewhere." The silence that followed was thick. Henderson leaned back, studying him. Then slowly, a small smile tugged at his lips. "You sound like your father," he said. "He never backed down either." "So?" Alexander asked. "So," Henderson said, rising to his feet, "we'll honor the contract. I may not understand your choices, Royce, but I respect your conviction." As the door closed, Alexander let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He had not only defended Maya, he had defended himself. Weeks later, the grand ballroom glowed with anticipation. Architects, journalists, and civic leaders filled the space for the Urban Vision Awards. When Jefferson Street was announced as the winner, applause thundered through the hall. Maya and Alexander walked to the stage side by side. Maya spoke first, thanking the community for their trust, reminding the room that architecture wasn't about buildings, but about people. Then Alexander stepped to the microphone. He scanned the crowd, partners, clients, skeptics, and then he turned to Maya. "This project," he said slowly, "opened my eyes, not just in design, but in life. Maya Johnson taught me what I never understood before, that true vision begins when you listen, when you love, when you let yourself be changed." Gasps rippled through the audience. Some eyes narrowed, others softened. He reached for her hand and held it high. "She is not only the heart of Jefferson Street. She is the heart of mine." The applause rose, wave after wave, louder than anything he had heard in his career. And in that moment, Alexander knew. This was the triumph he had been chasing all along. After the Urban Vision Awards, headlines spread across the country. Royce and Johnson, the duo, redefining architecture. Articles praised not only the Jefferson Street project, but the unlikely partnership behind it. Reporters marveled at their designs, but more often they marveled at their bond. A powerful white executive and a fearless black architect standing together. It was more than a story of success. It was a story of defiance. Maya read the papers with mixed feelings. She never wanted her love life to overshadow her work, but she could not ignore the ripple effect. Young architects wrote to her. Community leaders called her name. For once, she was not invisible. Alexander felt the shift too. His calls with investors were different now. Some doubted, some criticized, but many admired his stand. He realized the respect he had feared losing was being replaced with something stronger, respect for courage, not compliance. Together, they became symbols of a new possibility, that love and conviction could change not only people, but whole industries. Weeks later, Alexander invited Maya to the newly built Jefferson Community Center. It was the same place where they had once argued fiercely about design. The halls now glowed with murals painted by local artists. Children's laughter echoed through the gym. It was alive in a way that no blueprint could have predicted. Maya walked through, pride in her eyes. "This is what I wanted," she whispered. Alexander stopped in the atrium, beneath the skylight. He took her hands. His voice trembled, but he didn't hold back. "Maya, you are my North Star. You guide me where I was blind. You teach me where I was arrogant, and you love me where I was unworthy." He lowered to one knee and opened the box. The ring caught the light. Gasps rose from onlookers nearby, but Alexander saw only her. "Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, Maya stood still. Then tears filled her eyes and she nodded. Yes. The applause around them faded. For them, there was only the promise of forever. The engagement brought two families together for the first time. Vernon, proud and protective, stood across from Alexander's mother, still graceful but humbled by recent months. The dinner began stiff. Old divides lingered in the air, race, class, history. But slowly, walls began to fall. Vernon shared stories of his years as a planner. Alexander's mother listened, surprised by his vision. She spoke of her late husband, and Vernon raised his glass in respect. By the end of the evening, laughter flowed where silence had been. Vernon and Mrs. Royce lifted their glasses together, toasting the couple. It wasn't just a meal. It was a bridge, a symbol that love could do what politics and money often failed to do, bring two worlds together. Maya squeezed Alexander's hand under the table. He smiled back, knowing this union was more than personal. It was a statement to everyone watching. Two families, two histories, choosing to walk forward as one. The story began with the careless laugh and a cruel sentence. "I'd never date a black woman, ever." But that moment of ignorance did not define the ending. Through Maya, Alexander discovered what power could not buy and what prestige could not protect. She taught him that architecture was not about steel or glass, but about people. She showed him that love was not about appearances, but about truth. He once believed his worth came from contracts and towers. Now he knew it came from respect, courage, and the choice to stand for someone else even when the world pushed back. Love changed him, not because it was easy, but because it demanded sacrifice. This is the lesson he carried forward, that love has no color, no quota, no limit. It is dignity. It is respect. It is the courage to begin again. And to you listening now, never let fear or prejudice decide your future. Do not let old voices tell you who you cannot love or what you cannot become. If this story touched your heart, share it. And subscribe for more stories that remind us all, love is stronger than the walls we build.